Coming to get you, Barbara.
People sure do like to bitch about remakes a lot. If I had a nickel for every time I heard someone bitching about how everything is a remake or a sequel and how originality is lost, and apparently thinking this is a new trend, then I'd have a shitload of nickels, let me tell you. But I never had any particular issue with remakes of movies as a concept. Sure, some of them are bad, but some of them are good, too. And yeah, sometimes the remake is better than the original. After all, what's the more iconic and beloved version of Scarface? The 1983 version with Al Pacino or the 1932 version with Paul Mooney? Yeah, exactly. So, if you never saw the 2004 version of Dawn of the Dead because you have an insane vendetta against remaking films, then you need to remedy that immediately. And I want you to hit yourself, too. Hard. Anyway, in case you're confused, and, well, yeah, that is possible, let me lay it out for you. Dawn of the Dead is a remake of the original Dawn of the Dead, which came out in 1978, and it was the first sequel to Night of the Living Dead. Although Night of the Living Dead was remade in 1990, the remakes do not share any continuity with each other, so the 1990 version of Night of the Living Dead, the 2004 version of Dawn of the Dead, the 2006 version of Night of the Living Dead, and the 2008 version of Day of the Dead each have nothing to do with each other. The original series, the ones directed by George A. Romero, all share continuity with each other, but the remakes all stand on their own. That being said, Dawn of the Dead remake does everything that a good remake should. It's faithful to the tone and the general plot of the original while modernizing it and making it contemporary to the era that it was released in, without compromising the soul of the film. It was directed by Zack Snyder, the first full-length film that he directed. He would later become really well known for his next two movies, 300 and Watchmen. The plot of the film is pretty much the same as the original. The zombie apocalypse hits and a bunch of survivors all hole up in a shopping mall. They fight zombies and each other, but eventually realize that they can't stay at the mall forever, and they try to escape. The key difference is in the zombie rules, which are altered in a few minor but fundamental ways. Probably the biggest and most obvious change is the zombies are fast and can sprint after you like the ones in Return of the Living Dead. Another big difference is that not everybody that dies becomes a zombie. The zombie plague still has unknown origins and spreads via bites, and you can put the zombies down permanently by either destroying their brains or burning them. But people that die through normal means, such as gunshots, and were not infected by zombie bites, do not become zombies. The movie begins with Anna, a nurse who gets off a long shift and goes home to her husband. Already, if you're paying attention, you can see the end has already begun. They mention a patient at the hospital who was brought in with a bite on his hand, and he was transferred to the ICU. Anna goes home and bangs her husband, but afterwards they're interrupted by a neighbor's kid who is dripping blood from her mouth. Thinking that she's been hurt, the husband rushes to her and she tears his neck open. Anna manages to lock the zombie kid out of the room, but her husband bleeds to death and very quickly becomes a zombie who attacks her. She gets away and gets into a car crash after the zombies attack her car, and she passes out. When she wakes up, she meets Ken, played by Ving Rhames, a cop who is looking for his brother. They meet up with a guy named Andre and his pregnant wife, and this guy Michael, and they all decide to go to the mall to hole up. After a few zombies attack them in the lower level, they move up to the higher level, where they're accosted by a group of mall cops led by this guy CJ, who is a total asshole. He forces them to give up their weapons and locks them in a store at night so they don't steal anything. He barks orders at everybody, and is just generally unpleasant. He's gone mad with power. He sees himself as in charge of the mall and imposes his will upon everybody. It seems every Dead movie has to have at least one guy who's a total asshole. In the original Dawn of the Dead, it was probably Wooly, who was crazy and racist, and in the remake, it's totally CJ. After a truck of survivors arrives at the mall, there's a big disagreement on what to do. Most of the characters want to help them get into the mall, but CJ is against it and does what he always does when people disagree with him. He waves his gun around and curses a lot. The de facto leader of the group, Michael, finally pops him one and disarms him, and even one of his cronies joins the group. They lock CJ and his remaining crony in a holding cell in the security center of the mall and help the other survivors come in. It's then that they start to theorize that the bite spread the infection and that anybody who is bitten by a zombie will die from the infection and quickly rise as a zombie. Michael advocates shooting the bitten, but Anna talks him out of it, as even though it was her theory, she's not 100% sure, though she is proven right. Andre separates his wife from the group as she's been bitten and is very, very pregnant, and only he knows about it. The bite, not the pregnancy. She eventually dies during childbirth, but quickly comes back and gives birth to a zombie baby. An old lady shoots the zombie woman, and her and Andre shoot each other to death, and poor Anna even has to shoot the zombie baby, which is a hard thing to watch. Kenneth also makes friend with a guy who runs a gun shop across the way from the mall and is staked out on his rooftop picking off zombies. They communicate with each other by using binoculars and whiteboards. It's around the halfway point when you might start to think that, while the movie is great, it does lose a lot of the fun of the original, but this is also when the characters start to have some fun in the mall, and even have fun picking off the zombies from the rooftop. Eventually the power goes out, and they let a considerably mellowed CJ out of his cell to help them get it back up and running, though they have to go into the parking garage where they're attacked by zombies, though they do wind up with a dog. They decide to take some shuttle buses and reinforce them and escape, and plow through the now huge horde of zombies and drive to the marina, where one character has a boat that they can escape on and head off and find a nice uninhabited island. They plan to pick up the gun shop owner, but they find out he hasn't eaten in days and decide to get some food to him. They found that zombies don't pay attention to dogs, so they send the dog over with food. Although the zombies don't attack the dog, they do follow it through the small opening in the door and attack and bite the guy. One of the younger women, who got very attached to the dog, actually gets herself across to rescue it, but is attacked by the zombified gun shop owner. They get in the buses and rescue her and the dog and escape, though one of the buses flips over and most of the people inside die, probably due to the driver making the very unwise decision to make a sudden sharp turn while somebody else was operating a chainsaw. They manage to get some of the survivors from the crash into the first bus and make it to the marina, where Michael elects to stay behind and commit suicide as he's been bitten. In the epilogue, which runs throughout the credits, you find that the survivors do get to an island, but their fate is unknown, as it's shown that the island is also inhabited by zombies. I really had to think hard about the declaration I would make about this movie. I think it's great, but is it better than the original? In some ways, the original is better, but in some other ways, the remake is, so I really would consider them equal. They're both great, but for different reasons. The remake is more serious than the original and loses some of the social commentary. When the original came out, huge shopping malls were something of a new thing, so now they're everywhere. So there's really no need to comment on the impact of huge malls on society. Even though the plot is fairly standard and the movie isn't making any sort of important point, well, hell, it's a zombie movie, it doesn't really need to make a point, and its use of ultra-violence, visceral moments, tension, and of course the typical human drama is all very well done. One thing that I will criticize the movie for is the special effects. The gore effects and the zombies are all done really well, but there's a number of explosions in the movie, all of which look pretty fake, but overall there's really not much wrong with Dawn of the Dead. It's fun, exciting, and it's full of plenty of scares, and the faster zombies just contribute to the overall action. You can't just stroll away from these guys. This is the right way to do a remake. It pays tribute to the original and uses the basic overall plot and setting, but it stands on its own in a lot of ways. It doesn't require you to have watched the original or any version of Night of the Living Dead, and really, arguing about which is better, the remake or the original, will only come down to a matter of taste. Dawn of the Dead is nearly perfect, and I'm going to give it a score that reflects that. 9 out of a possible 10.